You're listening to Sports Radio Detroit.
Hey, you got snacks on snacks on snacks. Hey, let's go down the aisle. Snacks on snacks on snacks. 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 Snacks on snacks on snacks.
Welcome into Lions SRD. I'm Jeremy Stover alongside Jamie McTaggart. It is October 25th as the day we recorded this, so it is Thursday in the Motor City as we are getting ready for, I don't even know what week we're on, week 7, something like that of the NFL season. Week 8, so we are heading into the trade deadline week, and the Lions were actually very active in the trade deadline, and we'll get into that for sure. We'll also touch on their recent win against the Dolphins, kind of another convincing win actually for the Lions, and we will also get into this week's game against the Seahawks and what's on the line and what we think will happen. We'll give our predictions, obviously. But Jamie, I know I'm feeling a little bit better than last week. Last week was our first week together. We kind of got off to a bit of a rocky start. I wasn't feeling that well. I know you said you weren't quite feeling that well. So I'm feeling a little bit better this week, and hopefully you are as well.
Well, my voice is better this week. I definitely have a voice, and we'll see how it goes. I may have pneumonia.
Uh-oh. That is not good.
But, you know.
That's not good.
Right.
Well, I guess the best advice I can give you is get your flu shot. It is flu season, so that's...
Yes. And most insurances cover it completely, so...
There you go.
No excuse not to get it.
Exactly. That's a better advice than even I could give. So, all right. So let's get into last week's game before we talk about the big trade. Kind of break up the two games from last week and this week. They played the Miami Dolphins down in Miami. We talked about the fan clubs that went down there, which if you guys haven't reached out to them yet, go to it. You can go to last week's show to get all their info. But they beat the Dolphins 32-21 down in Miami. Pretty efficient game for Matt Stafford, 18 for 22. Not too big on the yardage, only 217. He did throw 2 touchdowns with no interceptions. Offensive line kept him pretty clean with just getting sacked once. But the big number that everybody is super excited about, including you and I, is Kerryon Johnson. He had another terrific game. He had 19 carries for 158 yards. He didn't find the end zone, but it's not really his role on the team. But the big number that sticks out is his yards per carry, which was 8.3. On the other side of the field, the Bossweiler didn't really have that bad of a game. He was 22 for 31, 239 yards with 2 touchdowns and no picks. Unlike Matt Stafford's offensive line, the Dolphins didn't do a good job of keeping Brock clean. He got sacked 4 times on the day. But Kenyon Drake, the running back for the Miami Dolphins, had himself quite a game. He had 6 carries for 72 yards and a touchdown. Jamie, what would you say just right off the top of the bat? What were your big takeaways from the victory last week?
My number one takeaway, as you kind of covered already, was the fact that Kerryon Johnson is a serious threat as a running back. He looked really great. They did end up able to contain him more in the second half, but that's because they were double coveraging him and just all over him, which opened up some other avenues, which is what you want from a run game. You want them to have to worry about you in the air and on the ground. So that was fantastic. I thought that the Lions played a much better all-around game. They were controlling the clock, they were controlling the field, and controlling the ball the whole way through the game. They had 1 punt the entire game and no turnovers. That's just fantastic. And then they got that 248-yard mark in the game, which is the most rushing yards that they have had in a game in 21 years. So it was just huge.
Yeah, and the run defense the run offense has really been firing on all cylinders lately. Kerryon Johnson's been leading the way on that. And one thing you touched on that I think has really been good is the turnovers. They have not really turned the ball over too much lately. I know we talked about last week how Matt Stafford, he had that 4 interception game, the very first game of the year against the Jets, and ever since, his TD to interception ratio has been phenomenal. I think it's 9-1 or 10-1, and that, obviously that improved from this past week. So he's been holding on to the ball very well, and so have his running backs. They've been doing a good job at not turning the ball over. And the offensive line, which seems to get better week in and week out, has been doing a good job of keeping them clean as well. And the thing I like about this game, they were up 17-7 going into halftime, and while the Dolphins still put up 14 points in the second half, the Lions kept their foot on the gas pedal the entire game. They didn't let the Dolphins creep back into it really at all. This was a game that pretty much from start to finish, you know, as a Lions fan, you kind of had the feeling that they were in control pretty much the entire game.
They did a great job of eating up the clock when they needed to, making tough defensive stands when it was required. They were very much in control of this game. At least that's how it felt through the entire game.
Right, and that's not something, as a Lions fan, you've been able to say much, pretty much since ever. That the Lions were really in control of the game. Now we touched on Stafford and the running backs, but the guy who really sticks out in the receivers was Michael Roberts. You touched on this in the show prep sheet. Roberts had 2 TDs on the day, and that's not something that when he was drafted that a lot of people had high hopes for, were him in the passing game. Everybody knew he was going to be more of a blocking tight end, but obviously the tight end position has been an area that the Lions have really needed someone to step up here as we get into the meat and potatoes of the season. And maybe that's Michael Roberts. He proved himself Sunday this past week that he can be a factor in the passing game.
Right, and he had been off the past 2 games with injury, so it was nice to see that he came back, and he came back strong from the injury, which is something that the Lions have struggled with, especially in the tight end position.
Right, so. Exactly. And to see him pacing the way for the Lions receivers is just makes it all that much sweeter. Defensively, pretty good game. Only giving up 21 points. Jared Davis led the way with 7 total tackles and 1 sack. And Jamie, I swear to you, this is not wrong. If you are looking at the Lions box score, you don't need to adjust your monitors. I'm wondering how this is real as I'm looking at it. But Jamie, Teez Tabor, that guy we drafted in the second round a couple years ago, Teez Tabor, the cornerback who's never really played much until this year, he also had 7 sacks on the day. So it's nice to see him getting some playing time and contributing when a lot of people are starting to use that B word that we don't like to use, bust, on a second round pick.
Right. No, and I will give Ben credit. In the first episode we did of Lions, Ben actually did call out that he thought he was going to be somebody to watch, that you'd see more of him with the Matt Patricia offense and the Matt Patricia defensive scheme, that you would see Teez Tabor coming out of the shell more and being more active and more productive. So it was nice to kind of see that come to fruition and see that he does have that talent within him.
Yeah, absolutely, and no doubt, he was definitely a guy I think on a lot of people's radars going into the season that, this was a time to put up or shut up for him. I mean, the NFL is certainly a league where you don't get many years to really prove yourself. It's a what have you done for me lately type of league, and obviously, guys' rookie seasons, you try and give people passes, and certainly rightfully so, Teez Tabor deserved one. But coming into this year, it was a put up or shut up season for him. He really needs, and he still needs to do more, obviously. So it's nice to see him up there and contributing on defense, but he's gonna have to have a big second half here. People are gonna kind of worry about him a little bit because Bob Quinn used a second round pick on him, and you expect your second round picks, especially when you're the Lions. You're not Jacksonville or the Eagles or the Patriots, a team that can maybe spend a luxury pick on a second round pick and sort of stash the guy for a couple years. You're the Detroit Lions. You need all the help you can get, and for Bob Quinn to exactly, and for Bob Quinn to use a second round pick on Teez Tabor last year was a bit of a disappointment. So it's nice to see him step it up this year, and really start to contribute, especially with some injuries they've had in the secondary. And Darius Slay, he's kind of been on and off the field a little bit this year with some injuries, and Darius just hasn't quite had the same season that we're used to seeing out of big play Slay, but what's helped him is this defensive line that Bob Quinn's brought in has really made up for it. I mean, guys like Ricky John Francois had 2 sacks on Sunday. Ashawn Robinson's looked pretty good this year, and Romeo Aqua has really looked well this season. So the defensive line has stepped up due to the injuries into the secondary.
Yes, they really have. It's been great to see them just come out and take care of Slay when he needed it, because he's held that defense and made that defense for so long at this point. And he's had some injuries this year. He hasn't really been playing at full health yet. So maybe we will get back to the Slay we're used to once he does get fully healthy.
So that win, looking ahead, that win puts the Lions at 3-3, which is definitely a spot that we all wish they were. Especially with the first few games of the season, with how their schedule looked, we definitely were hoping for a better record. But you just gotta move on week to week. So the Lions sit at 3-3. They are a game back, first place in the NFC North. Now them and Chicago have had their bye. Teams, Minnesota has not. Green Bay has had their bye as well. Minnesota sits at the top of the division at 4-2-1. Green Bay is at 3-2-1, and then the Bears are also 3-3. The Bears been struggling lately. They really need to they need to get their together, because the Bears have been falling on hard times lately. So
I'd say the Bears are playing more like what people actually expected them to be playing like this season.
Right, especially prior to the Khalil Mack trade as well. The loss moves the Dolphins to 4-3, and they're gonna start nosediving. When the season got started, I'm sure there were people out there that thought, look at how the Patriots got off to the start. Look at how the Dolphins got off to the start. Maybe this is the year the Pats don't win the NFC East. Those people are wrong as normal, and the Patriots are just gonna dominate the division as always. But we are a Lions show, so we're going to stick to the Lions. So, Jamie, who would you give as your player of the game for the Detroit Lions?
It's not an easy pick this week because there are a lot of opportunities for a player of the game. But you still got to go with Kerryon. Would the game have looked the same if we had not been able to be so effective on our rushing? Probably not. So I got to go with Kerryon.
All right, and I would probably agree with you, but to be different, I'm going to go with Michael Roberts just from the standpoint of the Lions. If they can get any production out of their tight end position, it will make all three of their receivers so much better, and it will just open things up. We've seen more creativity out of the Lions offense so far in the last few games, and if they can find some production from that tight end position, whether it's Michael Roberts, Luke Wilson, or whoever, that will just help everybody out. It'll help Kerryon Johnson out. It'll help Galladay, Tate, Marvin Jones. It'll help the whole crew out, and Matt Stafford, of course. So I will go with Michael Roberts. Kerryon Johnson was your pick. Again, Kerryon, 19 carries, 158 yards, with an average of 8.3 yards per carry. He did have that long 71-yard rush early in the game. Michael Roberts, my selection. He had 3 catches on 3 targets, 48 yards for 2 touchdowns. The only receiver to find the end zone. Some other stats, LeGarrette Blount did have 10 carries for 50 yards in the solo rushing touchdown. So good for LeGarrette Blount to get that yards per carry back up a little bit. Kenny Galladay had 2 catches for 37 yards. Golden Tate had 4 catches for 36 yards. Marvin Jones, 3 for 29. So Stafford spread it around a little bit. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 guys with catches. So Stafford did a good job of spreading it around, and it was nice to see a lot of guys contribute this week.
It was also nice to see that Stafford didn't have a bunch of rushing yards. He didn't have to scramble a bunch. He had one time where he really kind of saved the play, but it was a good all-around offensive game. And when you can have a well-rounded offense like that, you are going to be more successful because you can't focus on one player to stop the offense.
Exactly, and a guy we haven't talked about yet that we should definitely give some props to, Matt Prater, was 4 for 4 on the day with field goals, including a 50-yarder. So good day for the special teams as well. I just kind of glanced at Sam Martin, like you said, only 1 punt on the day for the Lions, but it was quite a boot, 61-yard punt for Sam Martin. So good day for the special teams duo as well. All right, so let's pause from the game recaps for a second and go what happened between the week. And obviously the trade deadline is rapidly approaching in the NFL, and the big trade so far in this season was the Khalil Mack trade. Oakland shipping the star pass rusher to the Bears, which obviously that got Lions fans a little nervous. Khalil Mack is a very, very good defensive player. He's not somebody you need to take lightly. And so that got the whole NFC North a little shaken a little bit. But the Lions, it might have taken them a few weeks, but they have finally responded to that trade. I am convinced that's the sole purpose they made this trade. They have traded a fifth-round pick, one of two fifth-round picks they had going into the 2019 draft, and they have gotten Damon Snacks Harrison from the New York Football Giants. Now, Harrison is a run-stuffing nose tackle, and if you are a believer in Pro Football Focus, which I highly encourage you should be, he has been one of the best run defensive nose tackles in the league past 3-4 years or so. This is a huge get for the Lions. I don't want to downplay this at all. I downplay a lot of things the Lions do because I'm not a true believer in the Detroit Lions. I'm not going to downplay this. This is a huge get for the Lions, and Harrison's going to step into play right away. They fully expect him to be on the field Sunday for the Seattle game, and as long as it doesn't take long for him to get up to speed, Jamie, this bolsters the defense tremendously.
It does. Last week we talked about how bringing in somebody that could stop the run game was the one thing that I wanted to see with the trade deadline approaching. That was the position I wanted to see filled because we've struggled so much when it comes to run defense. So I was ecstatic to hear that they got out Snacks because he is, at least the last 3 seasons, he has been named the top run stopper for all defenses in the NFL. And he just, everything that points to the fact that he immediately improved this defense to a very acceptable run defense now, which is amazing.
Well, and I guess it was Christmas for both of us. We both got what we wanted because you wanted a run-stuffing defensive tackle, and I wanted to tell you that. And Michael Roberts had 2 TDs on the week, so I guess we both got what we wanted. So either that or we're both pretty smart. Which we are pretty smart, but yeah. So Damon Harrison comes from the Giants, who are selling off any and all assets they have because the Giants are terrible. Snacks Harrison is 29 years old. I believe he turns 30 in like a month or two. He does have a couple years left on his deal. He is signed through 2020. His cap hit the next couple years. He will make $7 million. Well, his cap hit will be $7 million next season and then 9.25 the year after that. So this is not a rental as we're used to in other sports around the trade deadline. This is certainly not a rental player. So to get one of the best run-stuffing defensive tackles in the league for a 5th-round pick, especially when you already had 2 of them to start with, I can't give Bob Quinn enough props for this trade. This is probably one of the best transactions I've seen the Lions make, maybe in my lifetime.
I was actually listening to, and his name is totally escaping me now. I will try to figure out what it was. So I was listening to a Giants commentator yesterday talk about this trade, and he could not say enough good things. And he was like, "You Detroit fans, you don't understand. This guy is fantastic to watch. He is fun to watch. You are going to love seeing him on the field. You're probably not going to see him in third downs. He's not a third down player. He's a first and second down player. But every time he is on the field, you will be watching him because he is making a move." And he could not believe how cheaply Detroit got him for. With just a 5th-round pick. And he confidently said that it is the best move that Bob Quinn has ever made.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, 100%. I mean, I knew who he I knew of him. I knew who he was. It's one of those things
Right.
in high school where you know of the person, but you don't know the person. I knew of him, but I didn't know exactly how good he was. I didn't know his accolades, and so you just see, Lions trade 5th-round pick for Snacks Harrison, and it's kind of like, oh, okay, like that seems cool. And then you really start digging into who he is, what he brings to the table, and you start reading all these Pro Football Focus things about him, and it's like, holy shit, they got this guy for a 5th-round pick, and they get to keep him for a couple years. I mean, that's amazing. I mean, think about what you would do with a 5th-round pick. I mean, most of your 5th-round picks are backup special teams players. The Lions just pretty much used a 5th-round pick on Snacks and Harrison.
right. You can't get a better deal than that in the league currently.
Right.
And the Lions had all the leverage in this situation. this year, and like you said, they're in sell now, sell everything mode. So they're trying to get what they can to start building a new team. They're in rebuild mode, and the Lions were like, "You want more than a fifth-round pick? Okay, we'll walk away." Well, no, the Giants weren't going to let that happen. They took what they could get, and it worked out well for the Lions. It really did.
Yeah, no, this move. I mean, I'm kind of speechless on it, to be honest with you. I cannot give the Lions enough kudos, enough dabs, props, whatever word you want to use. I cannot give the Lions enough good words about this deal. Now, obviously, someone comes into your roster, someone's got to go, and that was Sylvester Williams. He was waived this week. You know, he's kind of that, man, that just too many guys on the roster. You can't keep everybody. So Sylvester Williams is the guy who got released this week. A'Shawn Robinson will be the guy next to Snacks Harrison on most plays. Like you said, he won't play on third down, especially on passing third down. Snacks is big boy. He's I think he was 6'4", 6'5", 355. So he's a pretty big boy. Now, Jamie, I'm not sure if you quite know the origin of the nickname Snacks.
I do not. I've been wondering.
Okay, so I did a little digging before the show, and apparently when he was a member of the New York Jets, he would eat a lot of snacks in the meeting room. And so whenever they would have defensive line meetings, guys would leave Rice Krispie treats on his desk, and he would eat them. And then eventually he started to kind of get a subliminal message in that, hey, you probably shouldn't eat these. You need to cut back on your weight a little bit. And so he eventually started passing them on to other teammates. And so apparently that's how he got the nickname Snacks. I haven't heard a person call him Damon. Everybody calls him Snacks. So apparently
Twitter handle is just @Snacks.
Yeah. So.
If you want to start following him, that is his whole Twitter handle.
Right. So apparently he likes the name, which is fine, which is cool, and I'm sure the Lions marketing firm, the PR guys, they'll have a field day with that as well. So no, but it's a huge get for them. It really is. I mean, if you're like me, if you are a Lions fan that is very cynical, very pessimistic against this team, you gotta stand up and applaud them, because this was a hell of a move. I really can't say much more than that. And coming into this year, there were some people that were definitely not too optimistic about Bob Quinn. The Tease Tabor pick wasn't working out. Jared Davis hasn't always looked great. Some of his later round picks haven't always looked, kind of panned out. So a lot of people.
A lot of speculation even around his drafting this year. His first round picks, and just people were shocked that he left people on the board.
Right. So a lot of people were starting to speculate about Bob Quinn. That's, at least for the time being, that's been put to rest. That's been completely put to rest.
Absolutely.
All right, so real quick before we get into the Seattle Seahawks games, just want to remind you about Statement Games. Go to statementgames.com today, sign up, get a free $5 worth of tokens to bet on this week's games. Statement Games is where you make your prop bets. You can bet if Matt Stafford's going to throw for 300 yards this week, if Kerryon's going to rush for another 100. Maybe Damon Harrison gets 5 tackles. Who knows? Go make your picks at statementgames.com, a proud partner of Sports Radio Detroit. Okay, so moving on to this week, the Lions welcoming the Seattle Seahawks to Ford Field. The Lions are favored by 3. Seattle is not the same Seattle team that we're used to seeing. They are very different in a lot of areas, especially on defense. Seattle comes into Sunday's contest the same exact record as the Lions, 3-3. Seattle's coming off their bye week, where the Lions had theirs a couple weeks ago. So Seattle will definitely be fresh and ready to go. Sometimes you wonder about West Coast teams traveling out east and vice versa, but being on the bye week, Seattle should be fresh and good to go. Another key note for the Seahawks, they welcome linebacker KJ Wright back. So KJ Wright, a veteran linebacker, one of the core of that defense, is coming back, so a very good player that the Seahawks will be getting back. But Jamie, this it's the same as what we talked about last week. This is a game the Lions got to have.
Absolutely, they have to make sure that they come in and they control this game. They, one way or the other, they have to come out with the win if they hope to have a successful season this year. If they want to keep their playoff hopes alive, this is a must-win, because it doesn't get easier in the next couple weeks.
Now, the good thing about picking up snacks this week is Seattle, while they aren't phenomenal at it, they still try to run the football as much as they can. They kind of have they do go by a bit of a committee. Chris Carson is the feature back, but you'll see Mike Davis, you'll see first round pick Rashawn Penny a little bit, but Chris Carson is their sort of go to back. He's got 352 yards on the season on 78 carries. He's kind of been bumped up a little bit, but the bye week I'm sure will get him healthy enough to go in this one. Seattle's passing offense, however, is not very good. I believe they are third to last in passing offense. Rushing, they're about middle of the road. So this is going to be one of those days where Romeo Aquara, Deshaun Hand, those boys up front that like to get after the quarterback, this is going to be a big day for them because the Seattle passing offense is not good already. We know how good Russell Wilson is at finding ways to get around the pocket and get open. So this is going to be a big day for the guys up front.
He's also really good at running the ball himself. If he sees an opening, he's going to run for it. And so it is kind of nice that we're going to have Snacks on the field for this because it's very possible he could be making a lot of tackles on Wilson just because Wilson's trying to get yardage himself with his feet. So that will be nice to see.
Exactly, and they'll have Snacks to be able to plug up the middle that'll allow the guys on the outside, hopefully some one-on-one coverage because with as good as Snacks is, he'll probably get some extra help to guard him in the middle. So you'll have guys like Deshaun Hand and Aquara on the outside. They'll be able to help out. Devin Kennard, hopefully he'll have another good game. Kennard leads the team in sacks with I believe 5.5. So, but this is a game where you expect Darius Slay to really be a big factor as well. Doug Baldwin, the leading receiver for the Seahawks, has not had the year that most people have expected. He's been banged up a little bit himself, but he's trying to get things right so far. So this is another opportunity for big play Slay to show up and really prove that he's a top cornerback in this league.
Absolutely, and he's ready to prove that. I think he's feeling better. He's a little healthier, and I think he's anxious to get that finger wag going again. He likes to be on top. He really enjoys being able to own that cornerback position, and I think we're going to start seeing it from him, especially this game. He doesn't have as big a challenge as he has had in the past.
Now, offensively for the Lions, Seattle's pass defense has been one of the better ones in the league, but their rush defense has not been very good. So this could be another breakout game for Kerryon Johnson. I don't know how much longer we can say breakout. He's here and ready to go. So, but this could be another big game for Kerryon. And I was looking through Dave Burkett's mailbag today on Free Press, and someone asked about Kerryon breaking Barry Sanders' rookie rushing record, which is at 1,400 yards. And Kerryon, on pace-wise, Kerryon's not even close. He's going to have to average over 100 yards per game the rest of the way, which, is not, with the way he's going, isn't impossible, but probably unlikely. So, but no, this is another big game for Kerryon Johnson. We don't talk fancy much on the show, but if you got Kerryon Johnson in your fantasy league, I would certainly play him. He's definitely in line for a big week this week. So, but it'll be interesting to see how the passing game gets going, because obviously against the Seattle defense, you're gonna have to be able to throw the ball as well. But that Lions offense, like we talked about earlier, it's been a little more creative lately, and we'll see what Jim Bob Cooter can draw up from Matt Stafford in the passing game.
I also think that it's going to be important to watch how the Lions' offensive line protects Stafford. Currently, they sit on top of the league, tied with, I want to say it was the Seahawks for least amount of touches allowed on their quarterback, which is shocking because last year the offensive line was awful at holding back anybody, and Stafford was on the ground more often than he was standing up. But this year they've really improved that. But Frank Clark is a serious threat to them, and he's going to be gunning for Stafford. So it'll be nice to see if they are able to maintain their record or if they are going to let him through and Stafford's going to get beat up.
Exactly, and Frank Clark coming back to the state where he played college ball in as he went to University of Michigan. And I think Frank Clark is an Ohio kid, if I'm not mistaken. So, sort of coming back near his hometown. So I'm sure Frank Clark will be looking to have a good game. And on the opposite of that, Seattle's offensive line is not very good as well. But the difference is they have Russell Wilson, who's a better scrambler than Matt Stafford. So that's the difference there. But no, I definitely expect a big game from the running backs, and hopefully Matt Stafford can kind of keep on this rhythm he's been on. He hasn't put up these gaudy numbers like we've seen a lot of other quarterbacks in the league this year, but he's been efficient, and sometimes that's all it takes to win games. I mean, a couple years ago we definitely wouldn't have considered Matt Stafford to be a game manager, but these last couple years he's kind of shown us that he can definitely be that. But obviously there's still those days where you got to put up the numbers, and hopefully this doesn't have to be one of them, but if it does, hopefully Stafford can find a way to do it against that tough Seattle pass defense. Um, and just looking at a big picture, this is definitely a game where we kind of talked about this last week. Detroit really needs this one for their schedule ahead. I mean, after this game, there are 2 division road games back to back, Vikings and Bears, and those aren't going to be easy games. The Vikings get the Saints this week, so at home, so that's going to be a pretty big game for them, and hopefully, I know it's only a day, but it is kind of a shorter week playing on Monday. I believe the Vikings are Monday night this week, so it'll be interesting to see how the Lions handle this game with that tough schedule coming up. Because obviously the players and coaches, they look at it one game at a time, and the most important game is this week's game. We've heard it, year in and year out. But from a fan's perspective, Jamie, this is almost a must-win.
I fully agree. I think that we are going to see some serious struggles in Minnesota and in Chicago. Obviously, Minnesota has been a little spotty this year, little hit and miss, but they're going to be at home. They're going to be coming off this game with the Saints, and I think they're going to be very tough. And it's not easy to play in Minnesota. No matter where you're from, Minnesota is cold. And then you get the Bears after that, and Khalil Mack. Khalil Mack is a serious problem for any offensive player. You can't ignore the fact that you have to come up on Mack, and you have to make it out of that game with your offensive players in good health. And with Mack on the field, that's not necessarily a given.
No, it's not, and you're definitely right. And the Lions, and especially Stafford, have struggled kind of outdoor in the cold. So you're right, that Bears game could certainly pose a problem. Good thing they kind of get a little earlier, in November, where hopefully it's not too cold and too windy out there. Unlike Green Bay, where they always play them at Green Bay in week 17, which is just kind of odd that it's always week 17 when they're at Green Bay. But unfortunately, the NFL doesn't like the Lions, and it can't be fair. And yeah, right, and can't be fair. And maybe once in a while give Detroit the home game to end the season. That wouldn't be a big deal or anything. But all right, just some keys to the game. We kind of talked about the run game a little bit. The Seattle's run defense isn't very good. Is there any other keys that you can think of for the Lions in this one?
Well, I think that it's going to be a lot coming down to the lines. Is the defensive line going to get through and mess up Russell Wilson's plan? Is the offensive line going to hold true and let Matt Stafford have the time to go through his progressions and make the plays that are out there instead of trying to rush? I think that that's going to be the be-all and end-all of this team at the end of the day. Those lines need to do their job.
Yeah, that's for sure. And the line is definitely improved week in and week out for the Lions. So I definitely expect that the line will definitely do their job, and hopefully they'll be able to contain guys like Frank Clark and the rest of that Seahawks pass rush. And no, I definitely agree that and the run game is definitely going to be two keys to this game. And who knows, it could come down to special teams as well. We talked about them having a good week last week. Prater going for 4 for 4 on field goals last week. Sam Martin only needed a putt once, which is usually a good sign for your football team if your punter's not doing much work for the game. So. And Golden Tate facing his old team. I know he's been on the Lions for a few years, but hopefully Golden will use that as motivation. Speaking of motivation, though, that's where the Lions might not have the advantage with Seattle's owner Paul Allen passing away about a week and a half ago now. So this will be with Seattle having their bye week last week. This will be the Seahawks' first game after the passing of their owner Paul Allen, who owns the Seahawks. He owns the Trailblazers, and among other things, Paul Allen, a very prominent figure in the Pacific Northwest. So Seattle could come out and be a little motivated for this, and it'll be interesting to see how they handle it. Now, like I said, it has been about a week and a half since Paul Allen's passing, but and usually, the emotions run a little higher when you're at home. But still, being on the road, it'll be interesting to see how Seattle comes out with maybe a little extra motivation, trying to win one for their late owner and the owner's family. So
it might work in their favor that they did have the bye week because it takes some of the raw emotion out of it, which helps if that's your motivation and that's your pressing force. If you're not playing with the raw emotions, it helps you make good decisions that lead to those plays that help win the game.
right, exactly. So yeah, that bye week might have might have more advantages. Might have more advantages than you think. Health. Let's talk about health for a second. So it looks like Theo Riddick might not play this week. He's been a either limited or no show at practice all week. Darius Slay has been limited at practice, but it looks like he'll play. Jared Davis the same thing. The one guy it looks like that's gonna come back. We see his name on the injury report every friggin' week is Ziggy Ansah. It looks like Ziggy might play this week. He has a good shot at playing this week, which, I mean, if you think about it, he hasn't played since week 1, so getting Ziggy back and then adding Snacks Harrison, that could really make this Lions defensive line pretty scary.
It could, especially if Ziggy can stay healthy through the entire game. It could be a major game changer, and you have an advantage, and there isn't a lot of film on Ansah, so it's not something that Seattle can effectively game plan for.
Exactly, and I think that would really help as well. And they need this guy to get on the field, and I mean for more reasons than just to help your team, win a football game. This is a guy that is looking to get a long-term deal, and the Lions franchise him this year to try and give him that, hey, let's see how you do one more year before we invest in you long-term. And I know being hurt is not normally, that individual player's fault, but sometimes bleep happens, and if you're going to miss most of the season, being hurt, it's hard to really evaluate how much you're really going to help this team. And let's not forget, Ziggy Ansah's only been in the league, 5-6 years or so, but he was an older player coming out of college. So Ziggy, I believe, is 29 or 30. He's pushing around there. I know there's been some conspiracies that Ziggy's older than what he portrays as well, but we'll leave that alone. We're not going to get into that. But this is a guy where if he's not on the field producing, I hate to say it, but I'm not signing you up for a long-term deal if you're an injury-prone, aging veteran.
Right. You have to be able to see the performance. You have to see that it can be consistent across time and across different offenses that he's playing against, and how can he adjust and all of that stuff. You got to know what you're signing up for before you put a ring on it.
Exactly.
That's the way I put it.
Exactly. That's pretty damn good analogy. And trading for Snacks Harrison is actually going to hurt Ziggy long term, because now that's one less need the Lions need to fill going forward. When you think too far down the road and you start thinking the 2019 draft, the defensive line was certainly a need the Lions have. It was a need the Lions had to upgrade last draft, they chose to go offensively, which is kind of working out for them. Nobody's complaining. But going into the 2019 draft, everybody's looking at it like, okay, now you better get some big boys up front to go after the quarterback. Now you got Snacks Harrison to cover the run. So now you're looking at it as, instead of signing, an aging veteran who's been known to have some injuries the last few years, maybe now we'll just replace his ass with a young defensive end in the draft.
Right. It's got to be playing on his mind a little bit.
Yeah.
He hasn't been able to show the Lions what he's made of, really, and it's got to happen, or he won't get a deal with the Lions, and he probably will struggle to get a deal elsewhere.
Yeah, exactly, and that's big, because if your own team doesn't want you in the NFL, generally a lot of other teams aren't going to want you either. So, especially when you're thinking of the money that he is hoping to get, that double-digit $1 million a year deal, that's not looking too likely for Zicky right now. So, all right, let's wrap this up with our predictions as we always do. The Lions favored by 3 going into Sunday's tilt against the Seahawks. The over-under is at 49. Jamie, what is your prediction? What do you think is going to happen in this one?
I am going to go out on a limb and say that Snacks is going to make a big impact. I'm going to put the Lions winning by 14. Most of the points scored in the first half.
Oh, all right. 14-14 win for the Lions. That's a pretty bold take, and we'll certainly be happy to have that here on Lions SRD. I'm not going to be that optimistic, but I definitely think the Lions are going to pull this one out. I think that locker room knows they need this one. And like I said, with the players, we all know. The most important game's the next game. We've all heard it, but I think that locker room knows this is an extra important game. They need to secure home field here, and they need to get this win. I think you're looking at probably like a 21-17, 20-14 type game. I think the Lions are gonna be able to pull this out. I think that over/under of 49. I think that's a tad high. I'd probably take the under on that one, but I agree with you on the Lions win, the 14-point margin. I'm going to go a little lower on that one. I think the Lions are going to win probably somewhere between 6 and 10 points, somewhere in there. I definitely agree. The Lions seem to kind of get off to decent starts this year. It's those second halves that they seem to kind of get a little shaken up on, but thankfully, as we talked about with the Miami game last week, they kept that foot down on the pedal, and they were able to keep grinding against the Dolphins, and didn't allow them to come back in that one. So hopefully the same will be said for this one, and the Lions will be able to pick up a win and move to 4-3 on the year. Real quickly, we'll just before we head out here, we'll give you the schedule around the division. Chicago is home to take on the New York Jets. That's a 1 o'clock game as well. Minnesota is at home for New Orleans. We touched on that. That is Sunday night football, not Monday night. I got confused on that one. So they are home for Sunday night against New Orleans at 8:20 on NBC. And Green Bay probably has the toughest matchup of all 4 NFC North teams. They travel out to LA to take on the Rams, and the Rams 7-0. They continue to roll. Aaron Rodgers, Aaron Rodgers is arguably the greatest quarterback of all time. He's going to have his hands full with that one. The Rams are a bad team right now, and going out west to face the Rams, that's not good for Aaron Rodgers and company. So.
And it's very lucky for them that they're coming off the bye week. I think that is going to help them out some, but probably not enough.
No, I don't know what is going to help anybody against the Rams right now. You're probably going to have to maybe deflate some footballs or something, because the Rams are just steamrolling people right now. So Green Bay's got the toughest matchup this week in the division. Minnesota's got a very tough week as well, but thankfully they're at home. But that's playing the Saints. If you can get the Saints outdoors, you're in luck. But Minnesota decided to join the Lions and put a roof over their stadium when they built U.S. Bank Stadium. So that's only going to help teams like the Saints. Drew Brees is a little different quarterback outdoors, but getting the Saints indoors, it's really going to help. Obviously, if we all take a step back and remember the last time these two teams played at Minnesota was the Miracle in Minneapolis when Minnesota won on that walk-off touchdown by Stephon Diggs. So, which hopefully Stephon Diggs has a better game than what he's been proven for my fantasy team. He has been a bit of a disappointment this year. And Chicago, while they're at home against the Jets aren't terrible. They're not great, but they're not terrible either. That defense for the Jets has been pretty good this year. Their offense has been up and down. You know, they got the rookie quarterback in Sam Darnold, so the offense is inconsistent at best. But that Jets defense has been pretty solid all year. But the Chicago offense has actually been coming alive. I think they've scored 4 touchdowns in every game the last 3 games. So that Matt Nagy offense that he brought over from the Chiefs has been rolling really well lately. So we'll see if Chicago's able to take care of business against the Jets, and then obviously back home the Lions with a decent matchup against Seattle, 2-3-3 teams going at it. So, and that game is 1:00 on Fox. So Jamie, any final words before we head out?
I think you've covered it all. I think we're going to see a good game this week, and I can't wait to see how Snacks looks on the field.
That's right. You and a lot of other Lions fans. That's for sure. Snacks Harrison will be number 98, so look for him in the middle of that defensive line on Sunday when the Lions take on the Seattle Seahawks. For Jamie McTaggart, I'm Jeremy Stover. Don't forget to go to sportsradiodetroit.com. Check out all of our latest content and all of our great shows. Don't forget to go to Podbean, Stitcher, the iTunes podcast app, pretty much anywhere you go to listen to your favorite podcast. Just go to the search bar, type in Sports Radio Detroit, and you can find recent Lions SRD episodes and other episodes from all of our great shows. Jamie, I will talk to you soon, and we will see you guys next week.